Good morning, folks. My project today is a worm bin, composting bin, whatever you want to call it. What I'm going to put in there is some red wigglies and some night crawlers. They're both composting worms. So I just want to tell you a little bit about what I've been doing. So I used to own a farm, so this is pretty much everything here you see is free. Sorry about the light. This is a little grow room I do all my seedlings in for my garden in the springtime, so I have LED all spectrum lights in here, so the light quality is very poor. The tub is probably about a 100-gallon tub, watering trough for the horses back in the days. Underneath I have it supported with 4 milk crates, 3/4-inch plywood cover I just had laying around that I had to cut to fit, 2 door hinges that I installed. The only thing I got in there are the bolts. And the nuts, probably, I don't know, $4 or $5. And then I put drainage rocks in it. I've drilled some air holes around the top, 3 in the back, 1 on each side, and 3 in the front. I got a drainage right there in the bottom, gallon jug to catch any of the moisture that drops through. This is a stainless steel tub. I don't know how long it's going to last. There's a little bit of rust over the years sitting outside. It's been outside for, I don't know, 10, 12 years. And then what I'm going to do next is I'll put some landscaper felt to get the dirt out of the rocks so I have better drainage. I will drill little tiny holes just below the rock level for oxygen and air to move this way and up through and out, or down through and out, to keep the worms healthy. And then I'll put a layer of newspaper over top of that, and then I have some compost. Organic compost I'm going to mix in with peat moss, and then I'll add some worms, and then I'll start adding all my compost. I'll link these videos together and it'll be just one 20-minute video or so. So my next step is to put some landscaper felt down and newspaper. So I'm back. So this is what I did. I put the drainage rocks in as you saw. I drilled little tiny holes around the bottom right there for airflow. I put industrial drainage felt down, and then on top of that I put newspaper. Newspaper in the drainage felt hopefully will keep all the settlement out of my rock, so it won't plug up any of my drainage holes. And when the newspapers get wet, it'll keep and hold the moisture better than the peat moss and the compost, so the worms won't dry out and die on us. So one of the reasons I'm doing this is because I'm really sick of buying 30 worms every week or every twice a week or whatever it is, the amount of fishing that we're doing. This is part of my experiment. Composting my food and raising worms for us to use instead of me going out and buying. So here's the lid, closed. As pretty much anybody knows that worms don't like light, so the lid will be shut. But also it's a pretty dark room once when you turn these lights off, pitch black. So one or the other. My next thing that I'm going to do is I got to mix the peat moss with the organic compost so it's damp, not saturated, but just enough so when you squeeze the dirt, no more water runs out of it. So I'm going to mix it in a steel wheelbarrow and bring it in here, and that's next step. I'll show you when I have that done. Okay folks, I'm back. We're going to fast forward about 4 months and show you the update on my worm bin and show you what I did wrong. So I put about 5,000 red wigglies in here, and I don't know, probably 100 earthworms. So the problem I'm having is my worm bin is so saturated with red wigglies, they pretty much took over the whole bin here, this 100-gallon container. I noticed this morning that, I don't know if you can see that drippage right there, but those are all red wigglies trying to find a way out of the bin. So I'm opening up the bin, and they're just crawling the walls. They're everywhere. I can't even keep up with food for them. Probably going through, I just turned on that overhead light just to see, but trying to find my little rake. So if you just turn this over, there's just thousands and thousands. I started out with, say, 5,000 wigglers. I'm just trying to see if I can show you. But there's millions of them in here now. You can turn this over at any point, and it's just thousands and thousands every scoop you take. There's a couple earthworms left in here. The red wigglies definitely took over this whole bin. So what I started doing was every time the earthworms would come up to the top, I'd pull them out and I'd put them in this little tote over here. Same thing, earthworms will eat anything. Kind of all over the place here. So these in here are earthworms, and this is what we use fishing. And as you can see, there's babies in here, there's medium-sized ones in here, and there's great big huge earthworms. So this kept me supplied all winter. Look at the size of those things. Supplied me all winter with fishing. There's at least, I don't even know how many earthworms in here, a couple hundred. And then there's just hundreds if not thousands of little babies already. They're just, the little babies are everywhere. You can just pick through these things all day long for little babies. So this is what I learned. It's one or the other. Red wigglies for composting, they're machines. They'll eat and they'll eat and they'll eat hundreds of gallons of food. We just compost our kitchen scrap. And what I do is I put it in a little food processor and I bring it up and I chop it up, and they eat it a lot faster if you chop it. So my whole intention right now is I'm going to clean all these red wigglies out as soon as I can till my garden, and I'm going to spread the red wigglies throughout my garden, and then I'm going to transport my earthworms into here so I can have a nice good supply of big huge earthworms for fishing. These red wigglies really don't do anything for fishing. They're just so absolutely small. They're just little tiny, look at that. You see that one now? You can't see it, but oh, here we go. Look at that little tiny red wiggly. So really, all red wigglies are for is for composting. And I tell you, they do their job. This thing does not stink at all. So my goal this spring is to empty this bin, put compost back in, reintroduce my earthworms into this great big bin, and that's it. No more red wigglies. The earthworms will keep up with my supply that I have for composting, but I can't keep up with the supply of my red wigglies and my earthworms at the same time. Was this a success? Absolutely. This is just, to me, is amazing. There's just so much going on and so much food being consumed that doesn't go to the wasteland or wherever, to your garden or whatever. Boy, I wish you could see them. Those are just thousands and thousands just everywhere. It's crazy. So what I do with my mixture is I feed most of it to my red wigglies right now because there's just so many of them. So I just kind of slop it around a little bit like this. So as you can see, I'm just kind of doing this, and then I'll just take the little bit of leftover I have for my earthworms, and they really don't need much right now. I just fed them the other day, so we'll come back and feed the rest to the red wigglies. You know, one good thing about any kind of wild animal, they'll only produce as much as they can to have a healthy life. So if I stop feeding this bed of worms, they'll actually stop producing, and the worms, the red wigglies, will end up dying off, and they'll just kind of eat their own. You know, it's compost, so it'll cycle its way through, and then when you start feeding them again, they'll start producing more worms and more worms. You could go through this worm bin and see all the eggs in it, all the little ones and everything. So it's a success in one way, and it was a failure for me in one way. I didn't realize the red wigglies would take over the whole big bin, and I wouldn't have any room for my earthworms, which I wanted for fishing. So I learned a little lesson. It'll be corrected probably in another month, and we'll move on. Any questions, please drop me a message. Hit the like button and the little chime for all updates on my channel. I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a great day.